And welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. We are in rapid fire with Tony UV. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, Nulu.
Okay, so this is rapid fire. We'll be shooting you with a lot of questions and feel free to respond quickly. I will get started. So, my first question is any notable incidents of threat prediction that you have experienced? Like there was a threat that you found, and as usual, this was not fixed by the team. And then down the line, when you come back, you see that that threat has been actually exploited and has become an incident. Anything like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's environments that are clustered, kind of decoupled um, components in an application environments that are very difficult to manage and to patch. And oftentimes in those types of environments where you have very complex and very numerous decoupled microservices, you can have a higher prevalence of misconfigurations and errors. And so one of the threats, one of the incidents that comes to mind is in misconfiguration. Misconfiguration continue to plague a lot of security groups and companies today, and it's something that easily, when not addressed, right, can be the avenue in which attacks can easily happen because they provide a conduit for the whole entire environment to be compromised. In this case, there was an incident where we had identified a some egregious mistakes in configuration that were heavily aligned to a specific type of malware. And the attack vectors were viable in order to introduce this malware into this vulnerable environment, which was ripe. It fit the pattern for other types of active campaigns that were happening. And unfortunately, sure enough, in 6 to 7 months, we saw that this actually did take place. Um, in terms of going forward, I think that this is going to be exacerbated. I think that criminal groups, syndicates, nation states realize that IT environments are complicated, and they're relying on that complexity to be able to bewilder IT management teams that are understaffed, overworked, and sometimes not having enough resources, right? So, ways in which that we feel that this threat will get exacerbated is developing malware for embedded component propagations. So, not necessarily trying to look for vulnerable components, but actually affecting update servers, supply chain servers, where they can
Oh,
simply
okay.
introduce malware and then have it go deployed in different environments, have that communicate back very uh, non malevolently to a command and control center, so that it's basically like a heartbeat to say, I'm here, I'm ready to be activated, right? And then provide opportunities for some polymorphic commands to be sent down. And then I think
Oh.
that is a business model where those types of malware authors and syndicates can monetize that presence almost like real estate to say, hey, I have this infiltrated environment. I have the ability to update these commands or these parameters. What do you want me to do? And they basically help to create repudiation for themselves to say, I didn't do anything, right? I didn't do account compromise. I didn't do, credential harvesting. It's so that others, interested parties, maybe nation states, could partake in that. And when you have nation states doing it, now you get into global, geopolitical issues, law, international law, and it's a
Yeah.
lot more difficult to prosecute. So that's just some predictive things that concern me going forward.
Yeah, and this would be an eye-opening moment for many teams where we take it for granted, and some of these things turn out to be actually exploited in the real scenario. Okay, so your book, which is risk-centric threat modeling, I would urge the listeners to read it out. The risk-centric threat modeling book is something that, in line with some of the other books that I have read around threat modeling, which are really, really thick, would have taken definitely a lot of patience to write. So one thing that I wanted, just for the listeners in the security spaces, what's your message for the aspiring authors that we have in our community?
So writing, I think, is an art. I think that, you have to be inspired. You have to have a muse in writing. So if you're aspiring to write your own book, here's some simple tips. Is number one, is when you get inspired on a particular point, maybe you're reading a document, maybe you're having a conversation with a customer or a client or an internal colleague. If something, if you have an epiphany on a topic that should be in your book, doesn't matter what the topic is, then capture it, right? Capture it as part of a voice message, write it down, or maybe start writing right there, right? If you've ever seen like some of those like classic movies on like Beethoven or Mozart or Chopin or, you know, immediately you see like some sort of inspiration and then they go to write the music, right? It's
Yeah.
similar. If you lose that sort of inspiration, you could lose a valuable piece of nugget that could really, take your book from being a 3-star to a 5-star or whatever, for that particular area of the book that you're writing. The other one that's you got to learn how to hack your mind when you're basically writing a book. If you're always in the same place writing the book, you're going to run into the wall of writer's block. So find environments that are conducive to you to write. Maybe it's going to out of your home, maybe going to a cafe, maybe going to a park, right? Find ways that will allow you to be more conducive to writing, and because it's difficult to write a lengthy technical book, and you're always looking for inspiration. But when you have the inspiration, maybe open up the iPad or even on the phone and start to do voice dictation on some of your thoughts so that you could migrate that into your chapters.
Awesome. All right, talking of Beethoven, you yourself play piano. You've learned it and then you also write songs. So, how did you learn it?
Well, I learned it by being obedient to my parents who forced me to play the piano for, 7 years. But I learned to read music, which I really wasn't very good at. But then I found it to be also once I started to master like certain songs, because when you're first trying to learn a song, it gets so aggravating because you one note and you feel like taking an axe to the piano. But if once you start to master a song and then another song, then you feel the power of music coming out of your fingertips, right? Especially when it comes to the piano. Um, so, what later on I began to appreciate it when I went to college at Cornell, I basically used it as a way to unwind. I would sometimes walk back from class. There would be a couple of different student halls that would have a piano. And at like 2 in the morning, I'd go in there and just like, play a piece. And then sometimes doodle on the piano where I play a lot by hearing. So to be able
Okay.
to play a song and learn it, it's almost like a challenge, but it's a different type of challenge that kind of taps into that other part of your brain. And I think it's really important. I think it's really healthy too. So I did compose 2 songs. I did actually pass one of those songs along to my daughter, who's also now taking piano, so she's learned it. I need to be able to put it to music sheet, but it's a great distraction. I think it helps engineers and technical people to just use their creativity in other avenues.
It's quite a creative distraction, if I may put it that way.
Yeah.
So, I figured that you also love competitive soccer. So, and you definitely we have seen you in places where you're speaking. What is your mantra for staying fit?
Yeah, discipline. It's really easy to relapse, especially as we get old. In the area, we get easily, I think, older in security. I think for every year that we live 5 years.
So true.
Um, so it's important to be able to have that physical balance. And whether you do swimming, whether you do a racket sport, or whether you do like soccer or weightlifting, I think it's important to be able to, have a time where you're hacking your body, right? To understand your body is a phenomenal of engineering creation, right? The circular system, oxygen intake, stretching. A lot of people just do weightlifting and they forego stretching. It's bad. How you need water, it's the diet, it's everything. It's if you look at your body as an engineering, type of like, complex, multi-node, application environment or system environment, then you'll be really interested to see how you can make your system right to be more effective so that you can work harder, think more creatively, sustain some of the dramatic types of activities that we do in cybersecurity. So it's discipline, I would say, is the biggest thing. And there's a lot of different tools nowadays on the phone to help to have a more of just a repetitive cycle in that area. But I think about one of the things that the Rock Johnson said as it comes to just eating. He says, you don't eat for taste, you eat for fuel. And if you kind of think about that, it really changes on how you can hack your body so that it could be more sustainable, produce more when you need it, and things even outside of security. So
And give you a lot of stamina for having and working with and playing around, especially with your children. Talking of children, you have four beautiful children. What's the most unexpected thing that you've learned over the years about parenting?
I think in the beginning, when I was, a very, very young father, in my early 20s, I've always wanted to have kids. I kind of had this, desire, but oftentimes when you're young, you want to have kids because you want to say that you've embarked on that check mark, right? Checkbox. And what you quickly find out as embark on the roles of parenting is that you're asked of a lot of you, whether to be a mother or a father, and you start to get naturally enamored with the art of giving of your time, giving of your resources, giving of especially your time, right? Because on paper, I think we can all have different roles, right? That fit a checkbox, but it's important to be able to, commit the time. Because if you think about going back from an engineering, I guess, mindset, you now have spawned new daemons and processes, right, in your overall environment, right? And you want to be able to see those creations to be thrive and produce, right? I mean, from an engineering standpoint, I think a lot of engineers can appreciate that, where you have an application that is doing efficient forms of multi-threading, right? Which is rare in some applications that are legacy. But with children, you'll find that the more you give, the more you receive, but it's a different type of receipt, right? It's not in the thank yous, it's not in the cards. The reality is, I mean, we're all children of somebody. There's good or bad with how our parents and grandparents and et cetera have been. There's a lot of time and effort that's been put in. So there's a lot of appreciation, and you're always going to be at a deficit and showing that appreciation. But you get a lot out of children. It shows you how to be a better, man and woman. It really teaches you a lot about the art of giving. And I think a lot of those things help you to be better in multiple other areas from a societal sense.
Yeah, I have seen the level of empathy definitely grows. Like you have better emotional quotient, you understand people better because you have seen a life grow from the very beginning. So it's amazing all the inputs that you bring into us today. And thanks for being in the rapid fire, Tony.
Oh, my pleasure. This was fun. Let's do it again.
Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll see you all in the next episode. Bye bye.